Hawthorn Hawks held a tight grip on the throats of the AFL teams from 2008 to 2015, finishing in the top 4 in 6 of those 8 seasons. The team was stacked with the likes of Buddy Franklin, Jared Ruffhead, Cyril Rioli, Sam Mitchell, Jordan Lewis, and many more. However, the ultimate success of the Hawthorn Football Club during those years can be pinpointed to a single move in the 2004 draft that would bring not one, not 2, but 3 future AFL Hall of Famers and multiple-time premiership heroes to the club, quite possibly the most successful draft in history. By 2004, the Hawks had experienced their worst season since 1967, with 5 wins and finishing in 15th place. They had not tasted premiership success since 1991, and a change was needed. Peter Schwab, as the coach, was adamant that the Hawks would win the premiership that year. However, after round 15, the Hawks were 2-13, which ultimately led to his departure. Hawthorn were in need of big changes and looked to the national draft, using the trade period that preceded it to obtain some high picks. At that time, the trade period was held at Princes Park. Alistair Clarkson had just become the new coach of the Hawks and had already caused some upheaval at the club's base in Glenferrie Oval. The coaching staff were quickly replaced, and popular player Mark Graham was dismissed only 30 minutes into his meeting with Clarkson. Meanwhile, Nathan Thompson was hesitant to request a trade to North Melbourne, fearing it would drag on for the entire trade period. However, the Hawks quickly agreed to the trade and received picks 10 and 26 in return. With picks 2, 5 and 10, the Hawks seemed to be in a good position for their rebuild, but the final minutes of the trade period proved to be eventful. At Princes Park, Hawthorn's John Hook and Collingwood's Neil Baum were seen in the corner of the room negotiating a deal on a scrap of paper. The Hawks eventually traded picks 10 and 37 to Collingwood in exchange for picks 7 and Bo Dixon, who had only played 3 games. It was evident that Hawthorn had a specific player in mind when they made the decision to move 3 spots up in the draft order. This move, if it had occurred in 2021, would have garnered significant attention from the media. Bo Dixon, who just played 3 games for the Collingwood Football Club, was not a star, and he only played 1 more game for the Hawks. During that time, Hawthorn was perceived as a laughingstock of a club, having to let go of their previous coach and missing out on their top choices for his replacement, including Rodney Eade, Terry Wallace, and Gary Ayres. Their purported number 1 pick, Mark Harvey, was not returning their calls. Although the truth was different, there wasn't much about the Hawks that was compelling at the time, and there was a great deal of mystery surrounding their new coach, Alistair Clarkson. The AFL draft media industry was still in its infancy in 2004, but every mock draft had Richard Tambling going to Hawthorn with the 2nd overall pick. The exciting midfielder from the Northern Territory would have added flair and excitement to the Hawks, whose midfield lacked creativity beyond Shane Crawford. Furthermore, the Hawks did nothing to dispel the rumours, as Tambling stayed with Hawks recruiting manager Gary Buckenara before the draft and even told the media that he believed he was headed to Glenferrie. The draft took place on a Saturday morning in a function room at Melbourne Park. Although Fox Footy did not broadcast it, it was streamed live on AFL.com and broadcast on SEN. However, it was generally agreed that Brett Delidio was going to Richmond with the 1st pick, followed by Tambling to Hawthorn with the 2nd pick, and Ryan Griffin to the Bulldogs with the 3rd overall pick. The draft would only become more intriguing from that point, with Premier Tools Jared Ruffhead and Lance Franklin next to be selected, with the only question being who would be a Tiger and who would be a Hawk. Although the Tigers were known to have concerns about Franklin's temperament. Before the draft, Alistair Clarkson had secretly altered the club's plans, aiming to replicate St Kilda's success in 2000 by selecting the 2 best key forwards in the draft. He planned to pick Jared Ruffhead at number 2 and then wait for Lance Franklin at number 5, anticipating that new Richmond coach, Terry Wallace, would have doubts about Franklin's temperament and enjoy the opportunity to take Richard Tambling to spite his former club. When the draft took place, there was an audible reaction in the room as the Hawks picked Ruffhead, snickers when the Tigers selected Tambling, and fleeting terror when the Hawks announced the wrong name for their 5th pick, Gippsland power forward Luke Franklin instead of Lance Franklin. Buckenara selected Jordan Lewis 2 selections later, which proved to be a smart move as Lewis was rising fast up the charts and might not have been available with the 10th selection. Despite some brave supporters positing that the club knew what it was doing, many Hawk fans felt that Buckenara had bungled the draft and vented their frustration on the Hawk headquarters message board. Wallace praised the Tigers' selections as the 2 best players in the draft, but it was Gary Lyon who reminded the media that the Hawks might have just selected the next Riewoldt and Koschitzki. Despite the backlash, Clarkson was pleased with the outcome and sported a broad grin throughout the rest of the draft.